Hello, namaskar. This is Firstpost and you're watching Vantage with me, Palki Sharma. It's finally official. Narendra Modi is the prime ministerial pick of the NDA. That's the BJP-led alliance. The oath-taking will take place on Sunday evening. The cabinet allocations have been locked but not revealed. The meetings and statements continue. The foreign guests have all confirmed their attendance, even the Maldives President. He's coming. And the world is watching and reacting along expected lines. Tonight, we'll bring you the latest. Also look at the BJP's record as an alliance partner, why China is cheering Modi 3.0 and what Muizu's upcoming visit to India means for the ties. Elsewhere, Chinese Coast Guard ships banging into a Filipino ship caught on camera. Is India arming Israel in the war against Hamas? Why Europe's young voters are choosing the far right, how Indian and Chinese drug makers plan to enter the weight loss jab market. Why the workers' strike at Samsung is such a big deal and how Pakistan lost to the US in a T20 match. Their fans cannot stop roasting them. All this and more coming up. The headlines first. In Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu's government is in danger of collapsing. War Cabinet Minister Benny Gantz is likely to withdraw from the government this weekend. Last month, he issued an ultimatum to the Prime Minister. Gantz demanded to know the plan for post-war Gaza and who would rule the territory if Hamas was defeated. In India, the Sensex touches a new record high. It soars by more than 2% to hit a lifetime high during intraday trade. The surge came after the Reserve Bank of India upgraded the GDP growth projection to 7.2% for 2024-25. British Prime Minister Rishi Sunak says sorry. He had left the D-Day anniversary event in France early for a television interview. The opposition has called the Prime Minister's behaviour shameful. Polls predict Sunak will lose in the 4th July general election. Pro-democracy activists in the Sudan say 40 people have been killed in shelling by the paramilitary forces near the capital. Since April 2023, Sudan has been ravaged by war. The conflict between the army and the paramilitary has claimed thousands of lives and displaced millions of people. And Sri Lanka complains to the International Cricket Council, claiming that their T20 World Cup team is being mistreated in the US. They've lodged a protest over bad scheduling and hotel accommodation. Colombo has sent an officer to the US now to look after the team's welfare. All eyes were on the Parliament today, not the new building. I'm talking about the old one. Its central hall has seen many historic meetings. Today was another one. NDA lawmakers gathered for their first huddle. It's called a parliamentary meeting. More than 300 leaders filed into the hall. Then came Prime Minister Modi. He made a special gesture after reaching the parliament. He bowed to the Constitution of India. Take a look at this.
संविधान को नमन कर रहे हैं। भारत माता की, भारत माता की, वंदे 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 वंदे.
All the top allies were there. Chandrababu Naidu of the Telugu Desam Party, Nitish Kumar of the Janata Dal United, Chirag Paswan of the Lok Janashakti Party and Eknath Shinde of the Shiv Sena. Get used to these names because they will play a key role in the NDA government. All these leaders were seated on the dais. Modi personally greeted all of them. Nitish Kumar surprised the Prime Minister by trying to touch his feet.
मैं एनडीए के हमारे मैं एनडीए के हमारे.
Those pictures will reassure the BJP. Nitish Kumar is famous for switching alliances in a heartbeat, so his support is very important. Now, greetings done, it was time for the speeches. Prime Minister Modi addressed many issues. He attacked the opposition, he promised welfare schemes, and he also gave a sneak peek into Modi 3.0. He said, you need a majority to form a government, but you need consensus to run a country.
सरकार चलाने के लिए बहुमत आवश्यक है, लोकतंत्र का वही एक सिद्धांत है, लेकिन देश चलाने के लिए सर्वमत बहुत जरूरी होता है। आंध्र, मैं अबू बाबू को पूछ रहा था, बोले हिस्टोरिकली ये सबसे हाईएस्ट विक्ट्री है। और ये जो यहां दिखता है ना पवन, ये पवन नहीं, ये आंधी है। तो मैंने किसी को पूछा, यार ये तो ठीक है आंकड़े वांकड़े, तो मुझे ये बताओ कि ईवीएम जिंदा है कि मर गया? अब किसी भी बालक को पूछो कि भाई लोकसभा के चुनाव के पहले सरकार किसकी थी, तो कहेगा एनडीए। 24 के नतीजों के बाद सरकार किसकी बनी? एनडीए। फिर हारे कहां से भाई? पहले भी एनडीए थी, आज भी एनडीए और कल भी एनडीए है।
Today was all about optics. Many people have questioned the NDA's unity. The opposition says it won't complete its term. So the NDA had to send a message of unity. All the top alliance leaders spoke to the MPs. They reaffirmed support to Prime Minister Modi.
For everything, in ancient times also, we had all resources. But recently, we are moving very aggressively. The reason is very clear. We are having leader. That leader is Narendra Modi.
अब मेरा आग्रह यही है कि जल्दी से जल्दी आपका काम शुरू हो जाए, शपथ ग्रहण हो जाए। अब आप इतवार को करने वाले हैं, तो हम तो चाहते थे कि आजो हो जाता तो अच्छा था, लेकिन आपकी जब इच्छा है तो जब भी हो, जितना तेजी से काम हो जाए तो बहुत अच्छा है।
Afterwards, Modi met senior BJP leaders like Murli Manohar Joshi and LK Advani. Then he went to the Rashtrapati Bhavan. Around 15 NDA leaders were present there. They handed over the letter of support to President Murmu. And what happens next? The swearing in. It is slated for 7:15 p.m. on Sunday, 7:15 p.m. local time. Leaders from neighboring countries will be attending. Some 3,000 delegates are expected in total. And it's not just Modi. A full-strength team is expected to take oath along with him this Sunday, which makes one thing quite clear. The cabinet allocation has been done. So who gets what? We don't have the exact details yet, but here's what reports say. The TDP and JDU want 3 cabinet positions each. Eknath Shinde Shiv Sena also wants one. They have preferences too. Nitish Kumar is apparently looking at 4 ministries: agriculture, rural development, Jal Shakti and railways. It makes sense, I guess. Bihar is an agrarian state. Almost 80% of their population works in the agro sector. So Nitish Kumar wants portfolios linked to that. But who will he nominate for these ministries? A few names are doing the rounds. Lallan Singh, a former JDU president. Rampreet Mandal, a leader of the EBC group, that's economically backward class, EBC, and Sunil Kumar, who is another community leader. Just one problem though, there is competition. Another NDA ally is also eyeing the agriculture ministry, and that is HD Kumaraswamy's JDS, the Janata Dal Secular. It's a party based in Karnataka, and it won 2 seats in the recent elections. Then we come to the TDP, the Telugu Desam party. Look at their preferences: education, health, road transport, telecom, and also the speaker's post. Again, who will Chandrababu Naidu nominate for these? Well, one name is doing the rounds, and that is Ram Mohan Naidu, not related to Chandrababu. Ram Mohan Naidu is a 36-year-old MP from Andhra Pradesh. His father was a union minister. Reports say TDP wants him to become the speaker. If not, at least a top cabinet minister. Eknath Shinde Shiv Sena also wants a cabinet berth. His son's name was doing the rounds for a bit, but the party now wants a senior leader to take the role. So that's what each ally wants. Which brings us to the BJP. They too have some red lines. First of all, the big 4: defense, finance, home and external affairs. The BJP is not willing to let go of these ministries. Same with railways and the speaker's post. Again, it makes sense because railways was a key focus area for the previous NDA government. We saw the hype around the Vande Bharat trains, so the BJP wants to keep that. The Speaker's post is also a no-brainer. The Speaker presides over the Lok Sabha. They decide on very important matters like suspending or adjourning proceedings, ruling on disqualification of lawmakers, and also settling defection cases. The TDP is keen to get this post, but the BJP will try to retain it. As for the rest of the team, no one knows for sure. The Prime Minister is keeping his cards close to his chest. He said that he will hand over the list of ministers to the President before the swearing in.
मोटे तौर पर मैंने राष्ट्रपति जी को कहा है कि हमें 9 तारीख शाम को सुविधा रहेगी। अब बाकी डिटेल तो राष्ट्रपति भवन वर्कआउट करेगा और हम तब तक मंत्रिपरिषद की सूची राष्ट्रपति जी को सुपुर्द करेंगे। उसके बाद शपथ समारोह होगा।
Modi did the same in 2019 as well. A lot of people were shocked to see S. Jaishankar on the stage during the swearing-in ceremony. They had no idea about his appointment. So I guess the only option is to wait now. Maybe Sunday's inauguration will spring some surprises. Now let's talk about the million-dollar question. Can the BJP make a coalition government work? Will the NDA be a stable coalition? It's a question that everyone has been asking since the election results came out. A coalition success broadly depends on 2 factors: accommodation and agreement. Accommodation in government and agreement on key issues. How has the BJP fared with the NDA on both these fronts? In recent years, the track record has been mixed. Let's start with accommodation. In the last 10 years, the BJP had a clear majority in parliament. They did not need support of the allies in the House. Despite that, the Modi government accommodated its allies. They were given ministerial positions. 7 allies were accommodated in 5 positions. Together, they held 4 cabinet berths and 7 Minister of State or MOS positions, basically junior ministers. And how many of these ministers completed their terms? 5 out of 11. This was in the first Modi government, 5 out of 11. In his second stint as Prime Minister, this cabinet was more like a revolving door. 7 parties were given ministries again, but many of these ministers left without completing their terms. Out of the 7 ministers who came from NDA allies, only 2 served a full 5-year term. The others quit over political differences. Like ministers from the Shiromani Akali Dal and Shiv Sena, they resigned from their positions. And that brings me to the second factor on keeping a coalition together: agreement on key issues. You need that. And this is where the NDA's unity will be tested over the next 5 years. Take, for example, the exit of long-time members like the Shiromani Akali Dal from Punjab. They used to be an important ally of the NDA. As recently as 2020, this party even held a cabinet portfolio. But then the centre introduced farm laws. The Akalis were opposed to it. They said the farm laws are anti-farmer, so they left the alliance. The laws were later withdrawn due to widespread protests, but the Akalis never returned to the NDA. There was another departure. Nitish Kumar, Bihar's chief minister and the leader of the Janata Dal United, after the BJP government abrogated Article 370, which gave Jammu and Kashmir a special status. The BJP removed the special status. It was one of the most significant decisions of the Modi government, also a deeply sentimental issue for the core supporters of the BJP. But this decision also sparked a rift in the alliance, and Nitish Kumar apparently felt betrayed. He said he should have been consulted before this decision was taken. He wanted a wider consultation, but back then the BJP did not make concessions, so Nitish Kumar also later left the alliance. The abrogation was challenged in court. Just last year, the court ruled in the government's favour. So the matter is settled. And Nitish Kumar is now back in the NDA. This time he is more powerful and difficult to ignore for the BJP. So if political differences arise, they will have to look for a compromise, and that's going to be their biggest challenge. In the short run, accommodation can help keep allies, but it won't hold without a consensus on political issues. And the allies are already bargaining hard, from meaty cabinet positions to special funds for their states and a review of some old schemes. For instance, Nitish Kumar wants a review of the Agniveer scheme, a key reform of the outgoing government where they changed recruitment rules for the defence forces. Under this scheme, new recruits joined the armed forces for just a period of 4 years, and after that only 25% of the recruits are going to be retained. Nitish Kumar's party says the scheme has caused widespread resentment and it should be up for a review. So how will the BJP navigate these demands? It must find a way to keep the allies together without compromising on its reform agenda. India's neighbours are also watching this closely, especially Pakistan and China. And guess what? They're enjoying it. Chinese state media has waded into Indian politics. They have a lot of strong opinions. The Global Times says economic reforms will be tough. They also say that this win looks like a loss. China Daily said something similar. They called it a stunning blow to Modi's image. I must say it's a bit surprising because these Chinese journalists have never really covered a real democracy. Yet they have so much to say. Also look at the Dawn's headlines. It's the biggest English newspaper in Pakistan. Here's what it said, and I'm quoting, "India defeats hate. Modi left at the mercy of pro-Muslim allies." Interesting choice of words. India has a history of coalition governments. It's not about mercy, it's about working together, and Pakistan should know this. They've had coalition government since 1947, ruling party plus the army. On second thoughts, maybe that explains the misconception. Same with Western media. They too can't contain their glee. Look at the Bloomberg headline. Modi just learned hype can only carry you so far. The New York Times has a similar one. Narendra Modi fell to earth after making it all about himself. What explains these sharp reactions? Broadly, two things. One is the obvious bias. Elections elsewhere will get vanilla headlines. The sharp ones are reserved for India. The second is bad blood. Modi's government regularly clashed with Western media, whether it was on biased reportage or critical commentary or unfair accusations. So this time they saw a chance to hit back. It's classic Western press. Not many policy implications though. But Pakistan and China are different. Let's look at China first. A lot of their coverage focused on one thing, and that is India's economy. New Delhi's mission is to expand its manufacturing capacity to become a factory to the world. But China state media says that will have to wait. Let me quote the Global Times. Given Modi's Bharatiya Janata Party failed to secure an outright majority of seats, it will be hard for the Prime Minister to push economic reform, but likely to play the card of nationalism. This is from the Global Times. Now, two things to note here. One, China expects India to go slow on reforms. And two, they expect an aggressive foreign policy. Maybe more efforts to take on China. And I guess this was expected. Beijing's goal is to spread perceptions, bad perceptions about India. That's what they want to spread. Look at this article in the China Daily. It calls India the graveyard of foreign firms. A lot of these have been published since the last year, and the goal is quite simple: to scare foreign companies and investors. We know China's economy is sluggish. Their GDP is projected to grow by 5% this year. India's GDP is expected to grow by close to 7%. Many investors are also fleeing China. In February, foreign direct investment plunged to a 30-year low. In China, it was 82% lower than 2022. And where are these investors going? To a lot of places like Vietnam and India. So what does China do? Run smear campaigns on the Indian reform path. That's what they're trying to do. Pakistan's agenda is different. They know that it's pointless to compare economies, so they are targeting India's secular credentials, which is not a new strategy. Islamabad has made a habit of doing this, especially on global platforms. The question is, how should India respond to all of this? We say it's quite simple. Prove them wrong. China feels a coalition will slow down India's reforms, so the ball is now in the government's court. It must show investors that nothing has changed. Coalition or not, India is open for business. Now let's turn to another problematic neighbor, that is the Maldives. Ties between India and the Maldives have tanked over the last few months thanks to their president, Mohammad Muizzu. But now there seems to be a détente. Muizzu is coming to India this weekend to attend Prime Minister Narendra Modi's swearing-in ceremony. The invite was sent 2 days back. The confirmation came yesterday. Muizzu will be leaving for India on Saturday. It will be his first trip to India after taking office. With him will be some senior government officials. And this signals the latest shift for Muizzu, away from his anti-India rhetoric. He attempted an outreach on Tuesday when he congratulated Modi on his election victory. Look at that post. Muizzu said, "I look forward to working together to advance our shared interests," which is a far cry from his earlier stance, from his attempts to destabilize Indo-Maldivian ties. It's an old relationship. And Muizzu has done everything he could to strain it. In fact, he propelled himself to power by targeting India. He fought the presidential election on an anti-India plank, his India Out campaign. Muizzu told the Maldivian public that India was unduly influencing their country, that India had stationed troops in the Maldives. There were about 90 Indian military personnel in the country and they had a good reason to be there. India had donated a plane and 2 helicopters to Male for rescue and relief operations. These troops were stationed to operate and maintain the aircraft and also to help them because Maldivian personnel did not have the expertise to fly them. But Muizzu made it seem like something else, like the Indian troops were nefarious agents of New Delhi stationed there to control Male from the shadows. The Maldivian public bought Muizzu's claim and he won the presidency on the back of the India Out campaign. What followed was a deteriorating relationship. Muizzu forced the Indian soldiers to leave. The final batch left last month. In January, there was a diplomatic spat. 3 Maldivian ministers insulted Prime Minister Modi on social media. They were suspended, but it sparked a backlash. A boycott Maldives campaign went viral in India. It has hit the country's tourism sector, the Maldivian tourism sector. And that may have also prompted a rethink because last month there was a change in tone. The Maldivian tourism minister made a request. He asked Indians to come visit his country. And that was not the only outreach. They also asked India for a loan extension, a rollover for debt worth $50 million. India has agreed to help, to roll over the debt, and that too interest-free. This was an olive branch by New Delhi, a signal that India was willing to let bygones be bygones for the sake of historical ties. New Delhi realizes that politics is temporary. It's the people-to-people relationship that matters. Look at Muizzu's congratulatory post again on Modi's election victory. The Indian Prime Minister responded. He said he looked forward, and I'm quoting, he looked forward to further strengthening our bilateral ties. So India has decided to take the high road, to forgive Muizzu's transgressions and focus on what is important, the age-old relationship. After this exchange, Muizzu was invited to the swearing-in ceremony and he accepted. Perhaps he now understands that unnecessary conflict is not the way to go, that there's a difference between campaigning and governing. You can spout anti-India speeches as a presidential candidate when you have little to lose. But once you win the election, you have to govern, you have to run your country, and for that, you will need help from neighbors like India. Perhaps Muizzu has finally figured that out. Although this visit may not be just about resetting ties, there could be some ulterior motives too, like money. Remember the recent Indian debt rollover we told you about? Male is hoping that New Delhi forgives the loan altogether. But whatever the reason for this visit, we say it's a step in the right direction. And speaking of petty spats, let's turn our attention to China and its latest provocations in the West Philippine Sea. There's been another flare-up between Beijing and Manila, and it's been caught on camera. The Chinese Coast Guard has been seen harassing Filipino ships that were undertaking a medical evacuation. This happened near Philippines territory, an area that China claims as its own. So Manila was carrying out a rescue operation. That's when Chinese vessels arrived. They blocked the Filipino boats and then they started bumping into them, hampering the rescue mission. All of this was caught on video. This incident took place last month, but the video has just been released. The Philippines has called China's acts barbaric and inhumane. Here's our report.
barbaric and inhumane. That is how the Philippines described China's actions. On May 19th, the Philippines was attempting a medical evacuation in the West Philippine Sea. A Filipino boat was trying to reach a sick soldier, but before it could pick up the soldier, the boat was intercepted by the Chinese Coast Guard.
We're going to medevac some personnel. We're going to medevac. You have a sick personnel on that boat. You have a sick personnel on that boat. We're going to medevac.
You can clearly hear the Filipino rescue team. They said they were going to medevac some personnel, that they had a sick personnel in the boat. But the Chinese Coast Guard didn't care. They proceeded to harass the Filipino rescue team. The video plays out like a high-speed naval chase, with the Chinese forces in their orange vests and white skin protectors blocking off the Filipino team, cutting them off at every turn. Eventually, the Filipino rescue crew managed to reach the boat with the sick soldier. The soldier was trying to move from one boat to the other, and that's when the Chinese struck. They bumped into the boats in a clear attempt to harass the sick person. This is what the Philippines has called barbaric and inhumane behavior by the Chinese Coast Guard. What was China's response?
If they notify us in advance, we can allow the Philippines to transport living supplies to the grounded warship and evacuate relevant personnel. But they must not use this as an excuse to transport construction material to the grounded warship and attempt to permanently invade and occupy the reef.
Instead of apologizing, China is blaming the Philippines for the incident. The spokesperson said that the Philippines should have informed China about the medical evacuation in advance. You could clearly hear the Filipino crew in the video, telling the Chinese Coast Guard that it was a rescue mission. But that isn't good enough for Beijing. They want advance notice when the Philippines wants to save people in its own territory. The spokesperson talked about the Renai Reef. That's the Chinese name. In English, it's called the Second Thomas Shoal, or the Filipino name is the Ayungin Shoal. It's about 100 nautical miles away from the Philippines, clearly within their exclusive economic zone. But when has China cared about any law? Instead, Beijing spouts bogus claims based on some imagined imperial borders, their infamous 9-dash line. Beijing treats this as gospel, even though the Ayungin or Second Thomas Shoal clearly belongs to the Philippines.
We have submitted our assertions to rigorous legal scrutiny by the world's leading jurists. So the lines that we draw in our waters are not derived from just our imagination, but from international law.
The Philippines had to ground a ship at the shoal in 1999 to keep the Chinese at bay. The sick soldier was one of the people guarding that ship. Beijing has been trying to prevent airdrops of food from reaching the soldiers on that ship. And now China is trying to prevent medical evacuations as well. The world needs to pull up China for its escalations in the West Philippine Sea, because if there are no consequences, the next ill Filipino may not get help in time.
Now let's tell you about Israel's war in Gaza. Today they stepped the bombing of Rafah. A ceasefire deal remains a distant prospect. It seems like Israel will continue its war. Now the question is, will this war be fought with Indian explosives? And I'll tell you why I ask this. A video is doing the rounds. It was apparently shot in Gaza. These are the remains of a missile, and going by one account, it was fired by an Israeli warplane. Now look closely. You'll see a label. It says "Made in India." We haven't been able to confirm these claims. Pro-Palestinian outlets are sharing this video. They say Indian explosives are enabling Israel's war. Neither India nor Israel have commented. Also, this is not the first time that a story like this has come to light. Let me show you another one from the month of May, where Spain had refused permission to an Indian ship. It wanted to dock at a Spanish port. Spain did not allow it. Why? Because reports say the ship was transporting explosives. It began its journey from India's Chennai, which is a southern city in India, and the ship's destination was Israel's Haifa port. A Spanish newspaper published this story. It claimed that the ship was carrying 27 tons of explosive material. Now, Spain, as we know, has taken a tough position against Israel. It opposes the war in Gaza. It has also recognized the state of Palestine, one of the 4 European countries that have done so. There was a time when Spain used to sell arms to Israel, but all those supplies have now stopped. As the war progressed, Spain hardened its position. Here's how their foreign minister explained the move against the Indian ship, and I'm quoting, "This will be a consistent policy with any ship carrying arms to Israel that wants to call at Spanish ports." The foreign ministry will systematically reject such stopovers for one obvious reason. The Middle East does not need more weapons, it needs more peace. Again, India gave no response to this statement. But let's dig a little deeper. Is India really supporting Israel's war? Is India arming the Israeli forces against Palestinians? Officially, the government's policy remains consistent. It wants Israel to exercise restraint. It backs the idea of a two-state solution. In fact, India had condemned Israel's recent attack on a refugee camp in Rafah.
The heartbreaking loss of civilian lives in the displacement camp in Rafah is a matter of deep concern for us. We have consistently called for protection of civilian population and respect for international humanitarian law in the ongoing conflict. We also note that the Israeli side has already accepted responsibility for it as a tragic incident and announced an investigation into the incident.
New Delhi's approach has been balanced, calling out the terrorism of Hamas but also urging Israel to exercise restraint. Experts say any material support from India is out of the question. But Indian explosives can still end up in Israeli hands through other means. Here's what some reports say. That third parties could purchase Indian explosives, potentially on Israel's behalf, and supply them to Israel. Third-party vendors like arms dealers are also a possible route. They offer alternative outlets to buyers like Israel. You see, not all arms deals have to go through the government, and loopholes like these can be exploited. So here's what New Delhi should do. Consider the optics and take action accordingly. There's also history to consider. For decades now, Israel has been a steady defense partner for India. Israel and India established diplomatic ties only in 1992, but their defense partnership began earlier. In 1971, when India was fighting a war against Pakistan, Israel offered support. It supplied India with arms, ammunition and instructors despite having no diplomatic ties with New Delhi. In 1999, when India fought Pakistan in Kargil, Israel supported India with more military equipment. So New Delhi has a lot to consider. What Israel is doing and the allegations of genocide in Gaza and the history that it shares with Tel Aviv. India should consider all its options carefully. Our next story is from Europe. It is gearing up for elections. Around 373 million people across 27 nations will vote for the new European Union Parliament. And who will they vote for? Well, if you ask the youth, most of them have one answer: the far right, the radical conservatives. Europe's Gen Z have seen a lot. A pandemic, a war at their border, and a lot of economic uncertainty. So now they want stability, they want less migration, they want more jobs. And that's exactly what the far right is promising. Plus, they're promising all of this on TikTok and Instagram. Our next report tells you how the youth may boost their chances.
In 2019, Europe went to polls. Its youth turned up in huge numbers. And who did they vote for? The Green parties. Parties that championed climate policies. It was dubbed the Green Wave. They won 74 seats in the European Parliament, all thanks to Europe's young people. 5 years have passed since then. Europe has seen a lot, from the COVID-19 pandemic to the war at its border. So sentiments have shifted, but it looks like the shift was quite a drastic one. Europe's youth seems to be backing the far right. What was once considered the preferred choice for boomers is now a favorite of Gen Z. So how did this happen? Well, it's not an ideology shift per se, but it has more to do with security. Take the Netherlands, for example. They have a new buzzword. It's Bestandssicherheit. What does it mean? A stable income, a satisfactory job, access to healthcare, and enough money to cushion against eventualities. Most of Europe's youth don't have that. Instead, here's what they do have: pricey housing, struggling hospitals, overcrowded universities, and an uncertain job market. These are the issues that they want addressed. But Europe's left and centre parties often only promise austerity, but nothing changes on the ground, which makes the far right appealing. Another major issue is migration. In 2023, around 380,000 people illegally entered Europe. It was the highest since 2016. This is also a contentious issue which hasn't been addressed by the current parliament.
We will be discussing migration more and more often. I think that the future of the European Union is focused around the target of building a clever migration policy.
So support for the far right is growing. Data suggests they're getting a boost. This includes the AfD in Germany, National Rally in France, Vox Party in Spain, Chega in Portugal, Vlaams Belang in Belgium, and the Finnish Party in Finland.
I voted for Le Pen because her program is more appealing to young people, even if I'm not interested in politics, but that's the one that I identify most with.
Another reason for the surge is their social media presence. Far-right leaders are doing a better job of attracting the youth. Take French politician Jordan Bardella, for example. He's a 28-year-old leading the National Rally. He has 1.2 million followers on TikTok, and his videos are quite the rage among the youth. 36% of French people under the age of 24 support him. In Italy, Matteo Salvini's far-right league is campaigning on Instagram. They make videos on migration and gender, sometimes even on stuff like pineapple on pizza. They want to protect Italians from that culinary monstrosity too. In Belgium too, the Vlaams Belang is spending a lot of money trying to woo young voters on social media. So Europe's far right has gotten its strategy right, talking about issues that matter to the youth and voicing it on platforms where they are. But while their appeal may be across the bloc, will it translate into votes? Well, we'll find out in the coming days.
Now let's talk about the latest fad in the health space, weight loss drugs, also known as skinny jabs. Two brands are ruling this market, Ozempic and Wegovy. The demand has exploded in the past 2 years. They have become big money spinners. Both jabs are made by the same company, that is Novo Nordisk, and they have elevated the economy of an entire country, their home country, Denmark. So obviously the world has taken notice, and many drug makers want it replicated, this success to be replicated, especially in India and China. They're coming up with homegrown versions of these jabs. First, let's talk about what's happening in China. It is about to become a battleground for weight loss drugs. Right now, this market is dominated by Ozempic. Last year, Ozempic sales doubled in China. Jabs worth $698 million were sold. So Ozempic is minting money, but its supremacy could soon be challenged, because the Chinese are developing at least 15 generic versions of this drug. 11 pharma companies are already conducting trials on their versions of the jab. These trials are in the final stage, which should not be surprising because the Chinese can copy anything. That's one thing they've aced, copying. Plus, they've got their timing right. I'll tell you how. In 2026, a patent is about to expire in China. The patent is on something called semaglutide, which is a medication. It's the key ingredient in weight loss drugs. It is used to make the Ozempic and Wegovy injections. Right now, semaglutide is patented, and the Danish company Novo Nordisk holds the patent. Semaglutide helps in reducing your appetite, so you don't feel hungry and you eat less. It also improves blood sugar control.
Semaglutide is associated, obviously, with a profound weight loss, a really good impact on glycemic control. And that is also important in patients suffering from obesity because, as I said, some of the patients have actually had pre-diabetes. We know that semaglutide works on blood pressure. It works on dyslipidemia. And then importantly, it also have a really profound impact on inflammation.
So semaglutide is an essential ingredient and it's about to go patent-free in China. Only in China because different patent laws apply in different countries. And this presents an opportunity for the Chinese drug makers. Once the patent expires, semaglutide won't be exclusive, so anyone can use it to make drugs. More importantly, anyone can use it to make skinny jabs. And this is a clear threat to Novo Nordisk. They've taken the matter to court. But these challenges will keep coming because Indian drug makers are also eyeing the very same market, at least 4 of them, Sun Pharma, Cipla, Dr. Reddy's and Lupin. They've all started work on their own weight loss jabs. These are among the biggest generic drug makers. So if they can make a successful jab, they may end up getting orders from across the world, which brings us to another question. Why does everyone want a slice of this market? Because the pie is very big. It's a very lucrative market. By the end of this decade, the weight loss market is projected to be worth over $100 billion. Today, Novo Nordisk commands the biggest share of the market. It's practically a monopoly. It controls the patents. So it sells the drugs at high prices. Look at the price in the United States. Ozempic costs around $1,000 a month. Wegovy, $1,350. $1,350. A generic version of this drug should be cheaper. It will also be more affordable for patients, and more patients can access it. A cheaper version is also very much possible. Experts say a drug like Ozempic can be made for as little as $5 a month. But there are risks too. Here in India, sellers have tried to smuggle these drugs. There have also been reports of counterfeiting. Ozempic is not officially available in the country, but there's an extraordinary demand for it. What do you think will happen when a generic version appears? The consumption is bound to shoot up, and if unregulated, it could also be dangerous. Look at the volume sold in the US. In the last 3 months of 2022, healthcare providers wrote some 9 million prescriptions in America. And this happened after the regulators allowed doctors to prescribe Ozempic for weight loss. Imagine what would happen in a country like India where regulation is not the best and patients tend to buy drugs over the counter without proper prescription. So this market is certainly expanding. More players are sure to enter it at some point. And before these new jabs hit the market, regulators around the world need to work on their strategy. Our next story is about Samsung Electronics. It's a 55-year-old company and it's witnessing something that has never been seen before. An employee strike at Samsung. Their employees are striking over pay disputes and leaves. It may not seem like a big deal elsewhere. After all, it's just another strike. But for Samsung, it's unprecedented. The company has fiercely resisted unionization, so much so that the word strike was a taboo in Samsung, which makes this one historic. The company says it will not affect any of the production orders, but it comes at a very bad time for them. Our next report tells you why.
Samsung founder Lee Byung-chul was against unions. He once famously said that he will never allow them until he had dirt over his eyes. And the company did resist. Union busting was famous. Strike was a taboo word in the company. Samsung hated unions, and it showed in the way it worked. Eventually, founder Lee Byung-chul died in 1987. The company changed a little bit, but even then, no union. Samsung got its first union in 2010. Right now, it has a national Samsung Electronics Union. It has around 28,000 members. That's 20% of the company's workforce. Nearly 75% voted in favor of a strike, and now it's happening. They've staged a historic strike outside the Samsung office in Seoul, a first such walkout in the tech giant's 55-year history.
Although Samsung Electronics has yet to listen to us, we see the strike as just the beginning. We plan to get to the end and fight to the end with all the employees' support.
We are delivering our voices through the strike that shows our strong will. We, the National Samsung Electronics Union, are not hoping for or planning to disrupt production so far.
The strike comes after a long series of negotiations between the company and the union. This year, Samsung had offered workers a pay hike of 5.1%. The union had accepted this pay raise, but it had two other demands: an additional day of annual leave, and transparent performance-based bonuses. Historically, bonuses make up for a large portion of the pay at Samsung. So the union wants the company to simplify it and make the process more transparent. Of course, Samsung hasn't accepted these demands, and that seems to have pushed the union to protest. Samsung is one of the biggest names in technology. It's one of the world's largest smartphone makers. It's the world's biggest producer of memory chips. And now it's also one of the only companies that produces chips for AI. Plus, the conglomerate dominates the South Korean economy. It makes up for 1/5 of its exports. So the strike raised concerns about supply chains. But right now, the strike involves employees from multiple headquarters, not workers on the production lines. But while it may not affect production, it comes at a bad time for Samsung. In 2023, its operating profit plunged to a 15-year low. The company is trying to reassure investors that its chip business can meet the demands. Plus, Samsung's share price is down about 1% since the start of the year. On average, 1 in 10 South Koreans owns a Samsung share. Now, the union says this is only a start. If Samsung doesn't listen to their voice, it could lead to a bigger general strike. Which brings us to South Korea. Labour strikes are not uncommon in the country. This February, 10,000 doctors walked off the job. Last year, thousands of construction workers protested against policies. Workers at carmaker Hyundai strike often. So, strikes are not new, but strikes at Samsung have never happened before. This is a company synonymous with South Korea. If Samsung can't contain this strike, the after effects could be felt by not only the tech giant, but also South Korea.
Superman has kryptonite, Indiana Jones has snakes, Achilles has his heel, and Pakistan's cricket team has India. This time with a twist. The T20 World Cup is underway in the United States. As hosts, the US is also participating. On Thursday, they faced Pakistan in Dallas, and not many people gave them a chance. The US is ranked 18th in the T20 rankings. Pakistan is ranked 6th. They also made the finals of the last World Cup. But guess what? The US has sprung a surprise. They managed to beat Pakistan in a super over after the match was tied. For someone who covers politics, it was quite strange. We're used to Pakistan duping the US, but this time the Americans were out for revenge. They held their nerve to beat Pakistan. And the fun part? The American team had a lot of Indian origin players, around 6 out of 11. On social media, people had a field day, especially with one player in the US team. That's Saurabh Netravalkar. He was born in Mumbai. He even played for the under-19 India team, but later he migrated to the US. He's not a full-time cricketer. His day job is at a software company called Oracle. And that's not all. He also plays the ukulele. Talk about skills. He codes in the morning, demolishes Pakistan in the evening, and plays music at night. If you made an Indian inside a lab, it would be Netravalkar. Look at all the memes and reactions to his performance.
Let's go, 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 go.
Pakistan may have lost that match, but one thing is clear, the internet remains undefeated. Pakistani fans are roasting their players, and with good reason. The last T20 World Cup was in 2022. Pakistan finished there as runners-up. On Thursday, they faced a very inexperienced team. Like Netravalkar, most US players are semi-professionals. They get just $240 per match, and don't forget the facilities. Pakistan has access to great international coaches. They have the best equipment. They also have full-fledged stadiums. And the United States, none of that. So how exactly did Pakistan manage to lose? Well, we may have found the answer. Take a look at this. Now it makes perfect sense. In the month of April, the Pakistan team trained with the Pakistan Army. Months later, they lose to the US. Either it's a tacit deal for some cutting-edge F-35s or the training was real bad. But jokes aside, let's talk about this World Cup. Cricket was never big in the US. As a country, they're obsessed with other sports like basketball and baseball. Not even football has managed to succeed in the US, which is why this tournament is important. A World Cup is a showpiece event. By organizing it in the US, the ICC is hoping to break into the American market. A quick side note, the ICC is the International Cricket Council. They run global cricket. Now, many of you may ask why? Why the American dream? There are two reasons for that. One is expansion. Every sport aspires to be a global favorite, so you must explore new frontiers. It's a natural progression. And second, for money. Just consider the advertisement slots. The Super Bowl is one of the biggest sporting events in the US. Guess how much they charge? $7 million for 30 seconds of ads. Compare that to the IPL final. A 30-second ad costs around $70,000. Do you see the difference here? 7 million versus 70,000. The US market has the potential to make a lot of money, but it's easier said than done. Right now, cricket is limited to people of South Asian origin. The key is to expand that, to introduce new audience to the game. This win against Pakistan will certainly help do that. And I know we trolled Pakistan a lot, but India too will be playing the US. So here's our message to the men in blue. Keep the spirit of the Quad outside the field. And before we wrap, an update on our upcoming coverage. Narendra Modi will take oath as Prime Minister for a record third term on Sunday. Catch the special edition of Vantage at 9 p.m. We will be looking at the new cabinet, the policy priorities and the international attendees. And now it's time for Vantage Shots, images that tell the story. Astronauts welcome the Starliner crew to the International Space Station. Rio's Christ the Redeemer dresses in green to raise awareness about the environment. And the Eiffel Tower gets new rings ahead of the Olympics. Finally, we are taking you back in history. On this day in 1975, the first ever Men's Cricket World Cup began in England. India and England played the first match of the tournament. England won this match, but West Indies won the World Cup. We're leaving you on that note. Thanks for watching. We will see you on Sunday. Alliances held meetings today. First, the BJP-led NDA alliance